Hi, friends, and welcome to the Voices of MCC podcast. Our hope is that you will be encouraged in your faith as you hear how MCC beliefs and practices are fleshed out in the daily lives of the members of our fellowship. I am happy today to have a couple of younger brothers on our fellowship podcast here to think about the Lord's work this last summer. We are now in August of 2022. We are on the precipice of the academic year, and here we're having a chance to look back at summer and some experiences that Aiden Trimble and Isaiah Callerman had. And I'm excited to have them introduce themselves in just a moment. I've known Aiden and Isaiah as members of MCC and students at Spurgeon College, and the joy that we've had in fellowship has been rich. They have been faithful church members as students, participating regularly in small group, using their giftings, concerned about the body of Christ. These brothers have been exemplary church members in their concern for other people in our church. And I'm grateful for that and happy that you get to hear from them today. I want to ask each of you to introduce yourselves and share a bit about your coming to MCC and what it's been like, just so folks who aren't as familiar with you or newer to MCC can catch up. Aiden, let's start with you.
Yeah, well, like a lot of students at MCC, I ended up here because of the school. So I came to Spurgeon 4 years ago, well, 3 years ago now, originally to play basketball. And so I was introduced to MCC through Philip Parker, who was my coach. So when I committed to play for Spurgeon basketball, I needed to find a church to go to. So I asked what church he went to. And so I visited Masters one weekend and really liked it, and I ended up becoming a member here, and I've been a member now. This is my fourth year, and the church has been probably the most important part of my spiritual life, my walk with the Lord, and teaching me the Word. And it's been a great joy and a great encouragement to serve everyone there and to be served. And I wouldn't be the man I am today without it.
Hmm. And that's true for each of us. And I'm just so grateful, Aiden, for, again, your faithfulness and your participation in your MCG has been a rich encouragement seeing that from a distance. And excited for you to get to share in a bit here of your experience this summer and what that means for MCC and for the future. Isaiah, give us the perspective of your entry into MCC and how the Lord is working.
Yeah, so I too am a Spurgeon College student, transferred to Spurgeon in the fall of 2020. I did my first year down in Texas, originally from Hot Sulphur Springs, Colorado. So been a bit of a distance from home throughout my college career, but moved to Kansas City almost exactly 2 years ago now, and found out about Masters pretty early on. Visited with another friend who was looking for churches. Um, and I think it was a little bit later in the semester that I kind of decided to settle in. And then I became a member, I think, in April or sometime in the spring of 2021. Um, so I'm in the Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy program at Spurgeon. I played soccer last year. I've been involved in different ways. Now I'm working full time for institutional administration at Midwestern. Um, and it's been great to be a part of Masters alongside all the other things that I've got going on in my life. It's been a big encouragement, everything from small groups to just Sunday worship, the relationships I've been able to invest in and be invested in by others. It's really been the first time I've kind of got to experience life in the local church away from home. Um, and for me, I grew up in, I was a pastor's kid. So my dad was a pastor for, well, not my entire life, but from 12 years old onward in a small town. So different experience, good experience I'm grateful for, but it's just been really good to be a part of Masters here in Kansas City. The Lord's been very kind to me in bringing me here. in a lot of ways that I wouldn't have expected. And there's many things in the college experience, I think, that beforehand, when I was in high school, looking ahead and trying to make my plans for the future, things that just never come to your mind that become um, major influences in your life, things that you just kind of never anticipated that make a big difference. And church membership has been one of those things. So
So well stated. And we have the joy of being in the same MCG, so I get to hang out with Isaiah on a weekly basis in the North Group. And connections with both of you brothers. Aiden and I are from Nebraska, and being in far western Nebraska, spent a good bit of time in Colorado. And Isaiah, I don't know of anyone who can say they come from such a cool named hometown, Hot Sulphur Springs. That's right up there with Appleton, Wisconsin. Just perfect name for a geographic location. Well, let's get to it, guys. Aiden, this summer you were at the World Journalism Institute. Unpack that for us. Give us some of the details, and then I'll chime in with some questions along the way.
All right. Well, World Journalism Institute is from World Magazine, which is now World News. So they're one of the premier Christian news organizations in the country. They have their magazine, the World Magazine. They have their podcast, which is The World and Everything in It. And they have a kids' TV news show called World Watch. And they're all extremely professional, experienced journalists, news reporters, and they're all really good at what they do. So they started World Journalism Institute a long time ago because they realized that there was a lot of journalists in the world, but not a lot of Christian journalists, and not a lot of Christian journalists who knew how to write stories and report from a biblical worldview. So they started World Journalism Institute as kind of a intensive course for 2 weeks to bring in young, talented journalists who are Christians and who wanted to do journalism in a way that honors God and tells the story of the Bible. So there was 20, or between 20 and 30 students there. Were all college age, anywhere from just graduated to going into their second year. And they took us up there to Dordt College, which is in northwest Iowa. So Presbyterian school out there. And they had most of their, forgetting the word, I'll just say their head honchos, their big names were all there. So the producer of their radio show, the host of their radio show. They had Les Sillers, who is a professor from Patrick Henry that does a lot of writing for them. And they had a number of other of their on staff journalists come, as well as the journalism professor and the video professor from Dordt College. So, what they really wanted to do with World Journalism Institute is to give us a crash course on every single um, every single method or discipline of journalism possible that they could. So they had us going out to places and reporting on stories, doing interviews, writing the stories, editing them. They had us do a 2-minute TV stand up like you were on the nightly news. They had us do a 2-minute podcast profile. And they had us do lots and lots and lots of writing and editing. They also had mandatory class periods 2 or 3 times a day where we would sit and learn and just take notes and have lectures from older guys who were very experienced in journalism, and they just basically just passed their wisdom down to us. So for like an average day at WJI, we would get up early in the morning, we'd have class for a while, then we would have lunch, then we'd have another class, which would be something really practical, and then we would have the time where we'd go out and practice it. So if we learned about interviewing someone for a profile one day, we would learn that in the morning and then learn a little bit more in the afternoon, and then we would actually go and do it for the rest of the afternoon. And we'd work on all of that and get the whole story done by the evening. And then we'd have a news huddle after supper where we would talk about what we learned for the day and play a little bit of a fun game and kind of reinforce the things that we learned throughout the day. And then on the weekends, they would send us out to do a big story. So the first weekend we got there, they took us to a tulip festival, which is a Dutch heritage festival because there's a lot of um, basically everyone in the Dordt College area has Dutch heritage and it's very rich there. So they have a festival every year for their tulips and they celebrate their heritage. And there's lots of interesting things going on. So they would send us out there to report and do a story. So I wrote a story from that. The next weekend, they had us do a podcast story. So I went and interviewed a guy who has a barbershop there in Sioux Center that won. He's won like national barber competitions and gives really good haircuts. So that's what we did for the first week was intense class assignments and writing, and then the second week. So there's 2 weeks of it. So the second week, they split us up into different tracks, so you could kind of pick your favorite area or the area that you're best at, and get really intensive, knowledgeable oversight from the professionals there. So I chose to go into the radio track. They had radio feature story writing, um, profile writing, TV, all of those kind of tracks. So I took the radio one. So my job for the week was to find a story, do all the recording and interviewing for it, and do all the editing for it, and then have it done by the end of the week to listen to. So I worked with the guys from World Radio, and they helped me out a lot, gave me a lot of tips. I went out and spent the day with the Iowa Department of Transportation, with a day on the road with them, and I got some amazing sound from that. And I put it all together and edited it into a 4-minute podcast piece. And then we listened to those at the end of the week, and everyone presented their work. And then we were done at the end of the 2 weeks, and it was really good. I learned a lot. I was not experienced as the other students that were there, but it was a really good experience, and it's led me straight into what I'm doing for this whole semester, which is with the pathway and being a journalist for them. And it was a really good experience.
And you did this as a part of your degree program in journalism, but it was kind of an extension of that degree. Is that correct? And a kind of an isolated special experience?
Yeah, so it wasn't accredited.
Mm-hmm.
It was held at Dordt College in their facilities, but I haven't received any college credit for it. However, I basically did everything in 2 weeks that you would do in a whole year of a journalism course.
Sounds
Um,
like it.
yeah,
Yeah, that is exciting to think about that experience for you. And now this fall with the Missouri Pathway, that's the Missouri Baptist State newspaper. So most, I believe, all state conventions in the SBC have a newspaper to profile information, and then with the SBC at large, the Baptist Press, which is a significant news organization. And you're going to get to tell the stories of Missouri here, or learn to do that here with the Pathway. That'll be a great experience, Aiden, to see what the Lord has for you there. I want to chat with Isaiah for a moment here about his experience. Isaiah, you were at the Acton Institute. So, World Journalism Institute, Acton Institute. You guys are getting this high level experience, and each of you with your degrees. So, Aiden, the World Journalism Institute, Isaiah, philosophy major, and Acton Institute. Unpack that for us.
Sure. So the Acton Institute is a Christian think tank based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They are kind of a more academically oriented think tank. So I don't know a lot about think tanks in general, but my impression is that there are some that tend to be more focused on kind of actual public policy work, doing things with lawmakers in DC. Although I believe Acton does some things like that. They have definitely more of an academic bent. A lot of the people who are involved with them are kind of folks who write books and host podcasts and are kind of the public intellectual kind of people. And so Acton University is their annual conference. And it's a 4-day event. This year it was June 20th through 23rd. And the theme of the conference is connecting good intentions with sound economics. And I think you could add to that another phrase that was tossed around quite a bit was that we were exploring the intellectual foundations of a free and virtuous society. So, kind of a broad variety of things going on there. The general thrust definitely being more of economic in nature, but all kinds of discussions being had there. So, just to give you a sense of what we did, what kind of the layout of the conference was. Arrived in Grand Rapids on Monday, and that evening we kind of had our opening plenary session and dinner at the DeVos Place, which is a conference center right in the middle of downtown Grand Rapids. We had these dinners every night of the conference, and we'd have a dinner, and then we'd have a speaker who would give a talk for about an hour, and then they would take questions from an interviewer and also from the audience. And so the first day was just kind of opening dinner and talk, and then day 2 on Tuesday was all day long. And if you're a first-time attendee of the conference, they require you to go to the 4 core lectures, is what they call them. And those were, the first one was focused on kind of Christian anthropology and kind of with making the argument that any of these things that we're going to be talking about related to economics and politics and related subjects necessarily has will be conversations about human persons and have relevance for anthropology and how, what is a human person, and specifically what is a human person as defined by Scripture. And then the second one was on natural law, which is something I'm not extremely familiar with, but just to kind of recap what the lecture was about. And it's something that's talked about pretty frequently in circles about that focus on Christian political thought and economics. It's kind of this idea that there are moral truths that are more or less self-evident to all people, whether or not they're Christians, whether or not they read the Bible. It's kind of the idea of like general revelation in nature, in just created reality. There's just moral truths that are self-evident to all people. And then the third lecture was on kind of the basics of economic thinking, and then the final one was kind of introduction to Christian political thought, Christian vision of a free government. And then days 3 and 4, we were allowed to select different lectures to attend. So there were all kinds of options to choose from. Some of them were more historical in nature, relating to the first lecture I attended on Wednesday was on Alexis de Tocqueville, who was a early 19th century French nobleman who visited America to study the penal system of America and kind of report back to the French government on what he found. But along the way, he wrote what he's now known for, a book called Democracy in America, where he's kind of taking in the American political system and how it is fleshed out just in society. And he kind of has a lot of reflections there. I bought the book at the conference, and I kind of started reading through it. I hadn't read it before, but I've heard selected quotations from it before, and it seems like he had some pretty spot on insights into American culture and all the way back then, things that it seemed like he kind of saw coming that we're seeing today. And so some of them were more historical, like figures like him. Other lectures were devoted to particular topics in economics or political thought. And so I attended that lecture. I attended a few lectures on economics and one on community development, variety of things. And so that was, we'd had 2 lectures in the morning and 2 lectures in the afternoon, except on Wednesday we only had one because during the time when we would have had the first one, the Acton Institute produced a documentary recently called The Hong Konger, and it's a story about a man from Hong Kong who is currently a political prisoner in China because of his stand against kind of their takeover of Hong Kong. That was, I'm sure many of you saw in the news. I think it really kind of coincided with when COVID was really kind of taking the world by storm, that when we were seeing all the protests in Hong Kong. And so he's a figure who is involved in that and is currently in prison because of kind of his stand against the Chinese Communist Party. And so they've made this documentary and gave everybody at the conference an opportunity to watch it. And that was really fascinating and definitely a good reminder that liberty in our country and really anywhere is such a blessing from the Lord, and something that we really can't take for granted. And just when you see somebody really putting their life on the line in a situation where they're probably not immediately going to get really make any much of a difference. One man standing up to the Chinese Communist Party is you kind of that's but still, just to see the courage that he had, and just kind of a encouraging and also definitely saddening, but that was definitely a highlight of the experience, was just getting to see that and discuss it with other folks there. So that was kind of the rhythm of our time, and it continued through Thursday night, and then flew home back to Kansas City. So.
Well, listeners, you know now why I wanted to have a chance to talk with these brothers, because of the richness of their experience and the depth of it. So we're thinking big picture here, communications and journalism and philosophy and ideas of how the world works. I'm going to come back in just a moment and ask each of you how this matters for MCC. First, quick speed round though. First idea that comes to your mind, just give it to us. We're thinking here about ideas. Aiden, what book besides the Bible has been the most influential for you?
In life?
Yes.
Oh boy.
Biggest influence. First book that comes to mind.
The first book that comes to mind just off the top of my head is called Cry the Beloved Country. I'm going to forget the guy's name who wrote it. I read it actually back in high school. And it was just kind of an eye-opening book. It was about, it's set in South Africa when there was segregation, and it's just kind of the struggles of that. And it follows the character's life as he gets thrown in jail and has attempts on his life while he's just trying to fix his life and get things straightened out. It was really really good book and an interesting story, but it really made you think about the state of the world. And yeah, it's just one of those books that kind of sticks with you.
I've heard that before. I've asked this question to many people over the years, and I've heard that book before. So, Cry of the Beloved Country. I haven't read it, but that's a good one. Isaiah, how about you? Besides the Bible, biggest impact on you?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is probably The Hole in Our Holiness by Kevin DeYoung. I read that book, I think, not too long before moving to Kansas City. And it just kind of, the lights, it helped turn the lights on for me in a lot of ways about the Christian life. Things that I'd just kind of been struggling with and just struggling to reconcile kind of a, a variety of things. So to get specific with that, I had often felt a tension over kind of, okay, I'm saved by grace. I'm not saved by anything that I do. It's the grace of God reaching down to me in my sin, lifting me up, and sealing me for eternal life with Him. It's absolutely nothing I've contributed there. um, Yet, the Bible is clear that there are there is a way of life that we are to live in response to that. And that was just kind of something I struggled a little bit to reconcile early on in my life, in my walk with the Lord. And that book really helped me to see how you can pursue holiness without being a legalist, or without, kind of, or without being a perfectionist, without kind of driving yourself crazy, or without thinking that kind of losing security in your salvation because of being too focused on your works, but also kind of like very helpful in a bunch of different directions. And it's not a book I think a lot about now, but it was definitely extremely influential at that point in my life, and I think kind of set a trajectory that I've continued on from there. So definitely an impactful book for me.
Thanks for sharing, guys. I encourage you to each of you go back and read those again. I know sometimes when I have a book that's really influenced me, I'll come back to it a few years later and I'll think of it differently. I'll think of it more deeply. I'll appreciate some things more and maybe have questions about other things. That's good. Quick answers here too. Two more questions. Aiden, you first. Dream job. What's your dream job? Just in a few sentences, and then Isaiah.
Oh man. I would have to say I would be happy with either one of these two. I would not mind being a basketball coach. I think I would just love that. I'd loved basketball my whole life, and just to get to be around it and to coach it and like get really involved in it, and just like I was playing it, but to see it from the bigger picture and to lead young men and develop them into good players, and also uh, good men that love the Lord and want to serve Him. That would be one thing. The second thing that I would really love to do, no, okay, I'll make it three. I have a three-way tie. My second thing I would like to do is I would love to be a play-by-play radio sports announcer for basketball or football or something like that. I think that would just be fun, to go to the games and get paid to watch them, basically, and get paid to talk about them. That's two things that I love to do. And I've always just loved radio, and I think that would be really fun. The third thing that I think would be really awesome is to do public relations for a racing team, because you could follow them around and get paid to watch them drive their cars that are really cool, really fast. And you get to promote your merch and promote your drivers, and they actually get to be at the races and tell the TV and radio reporters like what their pit strategy is. And it's just kind of interesting job to me. I think that would be really fun to do.
Fun. You've got a great list. Isaiah, how about you?
Well, those who know me will attest to the fact that my answer to this question probably changes every 5 days. Um, uh, but common themes, I guess, when it comes to hopes for the future and future work would be I've it's been I would say for the last quite a few years I have felt drawn pretty strongly to being involved in education in some form. I would I think it was my maybe junior or senior year of high school. I really kind of came to a realization of how much my education had shaped me and what a gift it was. And ever since then, I've had a strong desire to see other people experience that in various ways as the Lord calls them. For me, I think even what we're talking about today, going to Acton University, was kind of confirming in some senses of some things that I think the Lord's given me a strong interest in, and perhaps even gifting in. I really enjoy kind of theoretical conversations about things like philosophy and economics and political philosophy, those kinds of things. So I can see myself teaching in some capacity that brings all those things together. um, and one thing too, I've been thinking about recently that something that I really love and I think goes well with that is I love to see other young men flourishing and doing excellent work and honoring the Lord in the callings that He has for them, whether it be, a lot of my friends here are pursuing careers in ministry or theology at the seminary, or whether it's you, Aiden, in journalism and communications. I just really, it really makes me happy to see other young men flourishing in their callings.
Love it. Last question here. Again, first idea comes to mind. Favorite breakfast cereal as a kid? Aiden?
Oh, frosted mini wheats, easy.
Isaiah?
As a kid, probably Honey Nut Cheerios.
Oh, there you go. All right. Frosted mini wheats, honey nut cheerios. There you have it. All right. Let's think about MCC for a moment. This will be our last question for each of you. Aiden, how does your summer experience impact MCC?
Well, the most important thing that I learned from WJI, the most impactful thing to me, was how they explained stories and how that we as Christian journalists have a biblical kind of duty to tell stories in the right way. So that what they use the Bible to show us that in the same way that the Bible tells stories, we also tell stories. So thinking about the stories that you have in the Bible, they're the most impactful thing to you when you're reading. I know, like for me, if I'm reading Genesis, I'll get a lot more out of the story of Joseph than I do out of the genealogies. And that's because the stories help us see into a part of a person's life, and it helps us learn lessons from them through living their experience by reading it or seeing it or hearing it. It helps us learn lessons that we otherwise really wouldn't pay attention to if someone were to just sit us down and tell them and like make us listen to them, or if you have to write it or like read it from like an academic paper or something like that. So that was really eye-opening for me because everyone's I realized that everyone has a story and that everyone has an impactful story that, even if there's no action in your story, like, I I could tell someone my life story and yeah, I've never got beat up and I wasn't going on giant cross country trips. Like, you might not have had like an insane life or a crazy life story, but your story and the story of other people can have a significant positive impact on their life, and more importantly, it can have a spiritual impact on your life.
Mm.
And so telling stories that give you a glimpse into people's life is like it runs directly parallel to the Bible. And that was really eye-opening for me, and that really gives me a passion for journalism and for telling people's stories, because just as I'm blessed by the stories that I read in the Bible about other people's lives, I want other people to be blessed by those Bible stories, but I also want them to be blessed by my story, and I want to be able to tell other people's stories so that more people can be blessed and encouraged by it. So
That
I
is
would say, as far as it pertains specifically to MCC, it makes me um, willing to open up with myself and to be honest with people, to tell them my story and the things I've struggled with and what the Lord's been teaching me. And I also think that directly goes into other people at MCC, and that we can use our personal stories to edify and encourage our fellow believers and to point each other towards a deeper relationship with the Lord.
That is so insightful, Aiden. That is a joy to hear you think about those ideas out loud here. And I would concur that is reality. The Bible is a narrative, Genesis to Revelation. Our lives are sequential, which implies progress and a story, a narrative. And it's the weaving of our lives around God's broader story and bringing people into that. And I look forward to how the Lord's going to help you do that at MCC. And uh, very much looking forward to that. Isaiah, how about you? How does your experience at Acton Institute impact MCC?
Well, the first thing I would say that I think is just a good takeaway that I had and that I think applies to everybody is that the Christian worldview has something to say about everything. um, Christianity isn't just what we do on Sunday mornings or at small group. It's obviously not less than that. But Scripture is a foundation for thinking about anything that is trustworthy. And it is a sure source of wisdom that can be applied anywhere and in any situation. And because of that, as Christians, we only have cause for being the best we can be in whatever it is that we're called to, whatever kind of work we do, whatever kind of ideas we wrestle with in our day-to-day life. Um, because we have the scriptures, because we have, and honestly also just because we have each other in the church, and because we know the Lord, we have an advantage, just to put it simply. And we can pursue truth with confidence and humility, obviously, recognizing that we're fallen creatures. We're not all knowing. God is, but He has revealed Himself to us both in the world, in His creation, and in His Word. And we can confidently pursue understanding, whether it be in economics or political thought or theology or journalism or electrical engineering or whatever it is. Whatever you do, do it to the glory of God and do it with excellence. And that not only glorifies God when we do that, but it also is an encouragement to other people. And when we are flourishing in the things that we've been gifted with, when we are doing the work that God has given us with excellence, that not only directly serves the people we're working with and directly benefits other people, but also like it benefits us when we are doing well in those things. And as a result, we can be more of a blessing to each other.
Brothers, this is so rich. Your final comments here motivate me to love God more, love others, and think about His Word and expressing it and making Christ known by the power of the Spirit. Guys, thanks so much for joining us here. Listeners, I'm grateful that you took the time to connect with us here, and look forward to seeing all the Lord has for Aiden and Isaiah in the months and years to come. Again, guys, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for having us.
I do want to thank Alex Volkman for producing our podcasts, and Pastor Adam and Caleb Sheffield for their musical introduction and conclusions. Friends, until next time, the Lord bless and keep you.